Hey, everybody, it's time for another daily drop here on TarHeelIllustrated.com. I am THI publisher Andrew Jones. Very interesting topic here on today's drop. Before I do get into it, quick reminder, this show is sponsored by Underdog Fantasy, and we will have a message from them coming up in a few minutes. Okay, so why is this an interesting topic? Because I honestly think it's been maybe the topic or the topic B around this program the last couple of weeks. The defense is probably the number one topic, the fact that the Tar Heels did not play well against Virginia, did not adjust well against Virginia, and allowed that a huge rushing game by a Cavaliers team that otherwise can't run the ball. And then the pitiful second and fourth quarters at Georgia Tech, both of those games, surprising losses for a team that was top 10 in the country before the UVA game. And then they come back and play Campbell this past weekend. And as much as I do think that was a reset button game and that was a get your mojo back game, I don't think from a football standpoint there's a whole lot we can take from it. So the defensive question is still out there. However, I will look at it this way. The other thing that's hanging over, other than just defense, and I think the defense contributes a lot to this, is the negativity. Is just the sort of the fire and brimstone tenor around the fan base, much of the fan base. Now, I was pleasantly surprised that the turnout Saturday for Campbell was as good as it was. Carolina fans had a great turnout for Miami. That was the second best environment I've ever experienced in Kenan Stadium. The first one being the Florida State game in '97. Back when game day was in Chapel Hill and it was two top four teams. But a week later, it was a very disappointing environment, something a lot of people have come after me for and have criticized me for pointing that out. I can tell you right now, a lot of people in Chapel Hill in that building agree. They understand. It bit them some. And I also can understand, since then, the fans being upset because there's this Lucy pulling the ball away from Charlie Brown psyche that accompanies the North Carolina football fan that has no relationship with the North Carolina basketball fan. It's a fascinating dynamic that many of us in the media have talked about, and I've talked about with a lot of my Carolina friends, a lot of them. Some are in my family, some are my neighbors, and we talk about it. And that's why I think these last three games are huge, and it's going to be fascinating to see what happens with the narrative of the fan base if the Tar Heels win these games. Begins with Duke this Saturday in Chapel Hill. Then the Tar Heels go to Clemson. Then they go to NC State to close out the regular season. These are three very losable games, and they're three very winnable games. I'm going to get into more about the narrative and how these games can affect the narrative in just a moment. But first, let's go ahead and hear a word from our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy.
Yes, guys, we are so excited to be partnered with Underdog Fantasy. And we decided to partner with Underdog because it's the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and it's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry right now as well. And Underdog Fantasy has so much to offer, including their Pick'em game. And in Pick'em, you pick whether your favorite players will have a higher or lower stat total in this week's game for a chance to win big. It's so easy to play. Just pick 2 to 5 stats of your favorite players and choose whether they'll go higher or lower. And you can 20x your money by going just 5 for 5. They also have a Best Ball Mania. If you think you know football, you need to check this one out. This year's Best Ball Mania has $15 million in total prizes up for grabs, with the winner taking home $3 million. So sign up today with the promo code HEEL, HEEL, and get your first deposit doubled up to $100. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. And don't forget to register with that promo code HEAL to get your first deposit doubled up to $100. Must be 18 plus and present in the state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms do apply. And if you're concerned with your play, call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ncpgambling.org. Back to the show.
All right, we appreciate Underdog Fantasy for supporting us all football season, and they will continue to throughout the remainder of the football season. Okay, so the narrative is something that I find fascinating, and I completely understand. I really can. Some people may not believe me, but I do. And I think there are two sides to this discussion. The Tar Heels are 7-2. So they're not a whole lot of UNC teams have been 7-2 since Mac Brown left. I get that. Of course, it's the manner of those two losses that have people chapped. And I get it. I totally understand. But what happens if the Tar Heels beat a good Duke team Saturday night? Which I think they will do. Duke has some issues at quarterback with Riley Leonard being out. I actually think these final three games, there are similarities with all three opponents. Not very good offensively, really good and physical defensively. I think that's a better scenario of opponents for these Tar Heels than if they were going up against three really good offenses. Because the defense, I believe, would have major trouble with really good offenses right now. The Virginia and Georgia Tech games just occurred not too long ago. It's hard to shed that from your memory. So there wouldn't be tremendous optimism for the defense to do well against really good offenses. But Duke's offense is not very good right now. Now, I know Virginia's wasn't, but Georgia Tech's was. Georgia Tech had moved the ball against everybody pretty much. And the Yellow Jackets are not a terrible team. They will go to a bowl. Brent Key's doing a nice job there. Didn't seem like it. Last week when the Tar Heels with their loss, it seemed like they had lost to an equal to Virginia, but Tech's much better than UVA. Still, Duke is not very prolific offensively, but very physical defensively. This is going to be a game where the Tar Heels, like they did against Miami, have to match and surpass the physicality. If they do that on defense, they'll do enough to win because I think they'll score. They may not put up 45 points, but they'll score enough to win. Then you go to Clemson. Very similar scenario, except that game's on the road. And maybe the Clemson base, which appeared to rally around Dabo and his comments to Tyler from Greenville. Maybe Clemson's rejuvenated. The reset button Carolina got against Campbell, maybe Clemson got that against Notre Dame. And that would probably carry a little bit more weight than getting one against Campbell. So maybe the Tar Heels go in there and play a much better Clemson team than the one that NC State faced and the one that previous opponents, Florida State faced, and the ones that were losing, like at Miami in double overtime. Maybe the Clemson Carolina faces in a couple of weeks is just a much better team and a much more difficult opponent. However, I still think Carolina can score on them. So will the defense match the physicality and do enough to allow the offense to win the game? Same thing goes for the finale at State. And I know there's an adage, when rivals meet, you just throw out the record books and let it take care of itself. That's true. But at this point of the season, football teams are kind of who they are. And State's not very good offensively, really physical defensively, usually really good defensively. And the Wolfpack are going to amp it up a notch because the Tar Heels are in their place. You know that every bit of fuel that Peyton Wilson can bleed onto his teammates is going to be there for the Tar Heels when they come in, especially if they're looking at a shot at getting a 10th win. So the Heels have to match that. But again, it comes down to, I think the offense can score, should score enough that unless there are colossal breakdowns in defense or the Heels simply don't match the physicality, they'll lose that game, or they'll win that game, rather. They'll win if the defense does that stuff. And so that's what I think the narrative is probably going to more reflect than what it is right now. If Carolina is physical these next 3 weeks, and then the Tar Heels get wins, they don't have to be explosive on offense. They could win 31-17, 28-21. But if they win these next three and the defense bows up some like it was early in the year, and they win not 45-42, but 28-21, I think the narrative changes after the NC State game. I think the people who are highly critical right now, they might still be a little bit critical because they'll look back at those two games and say, what the hell went wrong? How did that happen? They ruined a potentially great season. Okay, I get it. But got to judge them on what they do when they close. Last year, this team closed terribly. I know Mac likes to say, well, the games were a lot closer. Okay, they still lost. You either win or you lose. The objective is to win. And when you say 9 isn't enough all off season, and then you lay those eggs that they laid in the middle of the season, you leave yourself with no option but to take care of business to close the season. That means beating maybe the three most physical teams that will play all year, maybe the three best defenses they will play all year. So I do think the narrative will change. So the tenor around the program right now among the fans may not be the same in 3 weeks, or they go 1-2, or the defense gives up an uncharacteristic number of rushing yards to these teams, and the Tar Heels suddenly have a lot of trouble and they lose 2 of the games, maybe all 3 of the games. Well, then all bets are off. It'll just get worse, but it can get a lot better. The only way we'll find out is for the Heels to play these games and see what the results are. I'm very curious to know what you guys think. I'd like to know what you think they're going to go in these last 3 games, what their record will be. 3-0, 2-1, 1-2, 0-3. Let us know what it is. And then tell me what you think the narrative will be after the state game. Everybody wakes up Sunday morning. What will the narrative about North Carolina's 2023 football season be that day? Let me know what you guys think. Let's have some fun with it. And I'm also really interested to know what you guys think. Your opinions matter. So let us know on Twitter. Let us know on Facebook. Let us know on our free and premium message board. And make sure you go ahead and like this video. If you're fascinated to see what the narrative will be, if you think you know what the narrative will be, if you have no idea what the narrative will be, just click like on this video anyway. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. Share the video with your Tar Heel friends to let them know we are here. And also hit the notification bell so you get dinged every time we upload. And by the way, it's football and basketball season, so we are uploading a ton right now, and you won't want to miss any of our stuff. I'm AJ, and I appreciate you stopping by.